Let's get a quick update around the 6 South Africans, including humanitarian ambassador Faisal Moosa and also UWC postgraduate student Hajar Mati, who had been detained after Israeli naval forces intercepted the global Sumud aid flotilla in international waters en route to Gaza. The flotilla was attempting to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza, and activists were intercepted. Now, the University of the Western Cape publicly backing Hajar Mutia, describing her participation as part of a long tradition of conscious student activism. But it's also received some international scrutiny after the Israeli National Security Minister, Ben-Gvir, he posted videos taunting activists there. It even come with scathing criticism from even within Israel. The Times of Israel editor David Horowitz, writing in an opinion piece that the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu needs to fire, and I quote, needs to fire Ben-Gvir after his flotilla provocation. David Horowitz describing him as a pyromaniac in charge of national security. But Professor Sarojini Nadar is a research chair, or the Desmond Tutu South African Research Chair in Religious and Social Justice at UWC. Good morning, Professor. Really appreciate your time. We're hearing in our eyewitness news that the citizens of other countries have already been released and on their way to Turkey. Do we know the status of the 6 South Africans here?
Good morning, Lester. Thank you for having me. I spoke to Hajar's mom this morning, and she tells me that she has spoken to Hajar. They are all in Turkey at the moment. That Hajar was on her way to the hospital, with other activists for medical checks, and that they will be coming back to South Africa tomorrow. So, they leave this afternoon, and there's a big welcome planned for them at OR Tambo. So that's the latest update that I have.
There seems to be not only a very public global shift, but also a shift within Israel. I quoted David Horowitz, who's the Times of Israel editor, who describes Ben-Gvir as a pyromaniac in charge of national security, accusing him of causing incalculable harm to Israel's security and reputation. I'm sure harm has been done before already, but what do you make of the internal criticism of the taunting of people who try and have tried to deliver aid to Gaza?
Well, I think that, like in South Africa, where people in this current moment feel emboldened to let their racism, their supremacy show, the things that they used to say privately at braais and at dinner tables show. I think that's what we're seeing now also with Israel, that they are behaving with such impunity because the world has allowed them to do that. And I think what missions like the Sumud flotilla does is that it brings up for scrutiny, it brings up to the public eye, it shows us what the real side looks like. And I think that, the denial constantly that there is no genocide, that there's no intention to harm a population. If that is so, why prevent the delivery of aid that sustains life, and not just prevent the delivery, but live stream the absolute bigotry and supremacy that they do through these awful videos? It's because they think that they can do it with impunity, right? And so I think that what we're seeing and what missions like the Sumud flotilla are showing us is that they're making visible the reality that's on the ground. And even though they know they're going to be turned away, I think it's really, really important that the world gets to see this.
What's your view on younger people becoming involved in conscious protest and humanitarian and aid operations? young people from across the world, from across backgrounds, religions, but also students from the Western Cape, from the University of the Western Cape and South Africa, the global consciousness around this issue?
I think it's really important. Hajar, I know for a number of years as a student and as a leader within our university community. She's part of the Palestinian Solidarity Association at UWC, and I think she represents a generation of young people who are not only mobilizing, but they are thinking critically about the world they inhabit. Last year, we had a convening with Francesca Albanese at our university, and both Hajar and our SRC president, Macintosh Kasembe, participated in that. And I think it matters because it shows that our students are engaging at the level of, international law, global accountability, critical analysis. And for me, that is part of the intellectual and political formation that we are responsible for at universities. So I'm enormously proud of our young people, and I think that this is the kind of work that we should be doing as an institution.
The criticism to the operations of the global Sumud Flotilla is that, well, it's not through designated humanitarian aid organizations that these flotillas are provocative. They're political theater. It encroaches. There has been for many, many years a blockade of Gaza, and therefore it also then threatens Israeli security, and that ultimately it escalates tensions rather than help Gazans. How do you respond to that argument?
Well, I think that it's a distraction. I think that for me, as I said earlier, I think the flotillas are making visible what we already know is happening, right? We know that there's blockade to aid, but the denials keep coming fast and furiously. And so the fact that they get turned away over and over again speaks to their steadfastness, speaks to a refusal to give up under these conditions of extreme constraint, and I think that the aim, they are nonviolent, right? The aim is practical and it's symbolic. So while there are other humanitarian missions, I think the symbolic nature of what they're doing is really important, and we need both.
Professor Sarojini Nadar, who's the Desmond Tutu South African Research Chair in Religion and Social Justice at the University of the Western Cape. Really appreciate your time.